Vignette, track 6 on Clancy, and yet another banger that aids in reinforcing this era's exploration and deconstruction of personal struggles. But is that really all this song is? Because when you start to look into the lyrics and the music video, we start to see more lore-related hints than in other seemingly non-lore songs this era. I'm anticipating that this video is likely going to be longer than some of the other videos I've done for Clancy so far, so for the sake of clarity and my sanity, I'm going to detail the video structure here. Firstly, I'm going to analyse the non-lore meaning of both the lyrics and the music video. Then I'm going to provide evidence for why Vignette is lore related before analysing it in a lore context. Before we start, I'm going to give my usual disclaimer that this video is my own interpretation of the song and is in no way meant to be taken as the only interpretation or the correct one. I would also like to take this moment to give a quick warning that this video will talk about sensitive topics regarding mental health and addiction. If you're sensitive to these topics, I advise you to click off the video. If you're severely struggling, you are not alone and there is help out there. Links to mental health hotlines will be placed in the description below. Vignette is an odd song lyrically, as it's both blunt and metaphorical in contrast to other songs this era that fall into one category or the other. Furthermore, Vignette is also one of the few songs in the Clancy pre-release livestream that were given a background explanation. According to Tyler, Vignette is about addiction.
There's a few interpretations of it. I think for me, it makes the most sense when I look at it from perspective of addiction and what that can feel like at times, a certain type of season of that, and that's why this song is very special to me, and I'm glad now that it's out. There's nothing like releasing music.
To me particularly, addiction is one fragment of the song's meaning as a whole. In its entirety, Vignette is about desperately trying to find effective coping mechanisms to deal with suicidal ideation. This battle with suicidal ideation is quite prominent through the use of structural techniques. Firstly, there is a frequent semantic field throughout the lyrics of death with bones, flesh, zombies, and dead. It's in nearly every verse apart from the chorus and bridge. This shows that Tyler is essentially consumed by thoughts of death and suicide at nearly every point. It could also reference how he is also dead. There is no soul to him due to struggling with suicidal thoughts and depression. To add to this, enjambment is also in nearly every verse, making nearly all the lines of lyrics flow together. The purpose of this is to emphasize that these struggles with suicidal thoughts and depression are inescapable for him. They're always there to make him suffer. The pre-chorus mentions that this song is a tribute to zombies of which I've become. A zombie is something that has no soul or sentience to it, reaffirming that notion of Tyler having no soul to him due to these struggles. Moreover, zombies also slowly degrade in quality, showing that he is slowly dying, slowly losing to these suicidal thoughts before they destroy him completely. The structure and the title of the song itself reinforce these ideas of suicidal ideation. A vignette can mean a brief account or episode, implying that he's trying to fight off a depressive episode. Moreover, vignette refers to an effect on photographs where the background fades, which implies that Tyler feels as though his life is fading, being consumed by depression until there's nothing left but this black void. The structure, meanwhile, helps to illustrate this battle with suicidal thoughts. It first starts off with Tyler fighting the vignette before developing very quickly into being swallowed by it. To be swallowed is to be fully consumed, and if we take the usage of this verb quite literally, after something is swallowed, it is then destroyed through the process of digestion. Tyler is swallowed by suicidal thoughts, and it will destroy him. The second verse, however, is where we arguably get most proof of this song being about coping with depression, the important lyric here being hounded by a bunch of dead when the search party found him. Hounded is quite an interesting choice of word when one looks into the etymology of it. Part of the word originates from hound, a dog. This is a verb used particularly to describe the behaviour of dogs or being like a dog in characteristics. How does this prove anything about suicidal ideation? This makes the lyric a potential allusion to Heavy Dirty Soul, as in those lyrics, death inspires him like a dog inspires a rabbit, much like how the dead, associated with dog-like characteristics, are hounding Tyler. The callback not only proves that Tyler is being attacked by thoughts of death, but also shows that this is relentless, as hounded means to relentlessly attack. This interpretation recontextualizes the entirety of that verse. Tyler is thinking there is no way he is heading to suicidal thoughts or attempting to commit it, but he is, and he is scared about being plagued with these thoughts. Flesh covered in bites is also recontextualized as dogs bite. Death has bitten Tyler, materializing as self-harm. Due to the severity of these struggles, Tyler is desperate to cope with these thoughts and survive. In both the first verse and chorus, this is conveyed through the use of imperatives, instructions with peeling, piece it, hope, testing, clinging, fighting. This consistent usage of instructions creates a sense of urgency tonally, a desperation to regain control by essentially barking out orders. Specifically in the chorus, it shows Tyler's focus on trying to survive against the Vignette, foregoing using personal pronouns to refer to himself just so he can focus on the action of fighting off the Vignette. Repetition is also used frequently to achieve this aim. In the pre-chorus, "Where do I go from here?" is repeated, showing his desperation for an answer, for some help in order to cope. Meanwhile, in the bridge, "No, not me, it's for a friend," that's repeated 4 times with some variation, which shows his desperation to obtain the means he needs to cope, convincing others that it's not for him, so he can obtain it as soon as possible. There's also an irregular rhyme scheme in Vignette, with lyrics skipping a line to rhyme and sometimes not even rhyming at all. Typically in poetry, an irregular rhyming scheme conveys that the poetic voice is emotional. In this case, it reflects Tyler's desperation, unable to get a grip on his thoughts due to it. Lyrically, the chorus also emphasizes this desperation. In clinging to promises, clinging means to hold onto something tightly, showing his desperation as he holds tightly onto promises that things will get better, the promises of these ways to cope actually working. Tunnel's cave refers to the concept of tunnel vision, which means to focus on something exclusively, but at the cost of everything else going out of focus. Not only does this show Tyler's desperation to cope, as this is the only thing he's focusing on, but it also shows that the longer he suffers, the more this idea of recovery or coping starts to fall, as the tunnel caves in, falls in. As aforementioned, the song focuses a lot on detailing the ways in which Tyler tries to cope with suicidal ideation. However, much like songs such as Overcompensate with Overconfidence, Backslide with Masking, and Routines with Avoidance, Vignette shows how unhealthy these coping mechanisms are. One of the mechanisms discussed in Vignette is addiction to substances, notably drugs. Verse 1 exemplifies this theme the most. Peeling from his bones can be taken quite literally as skin peeling from his bones, a symptom of some forms of drug abuse. Long enough for he to pitch the greener grasses is grammatically incorrect. He should be replaced with him. Tyler is speaking nonsense due to being under the influence. Similarly to this, the sentences of verse 1 are incredibly short, with the longer lines being spoken quite quickly in a staccato style, which not only illustrates the urgency for the next hit due to being addicted and needing to cope, but it also creates a sense of breathlessness, which can be considered a symptom of withdrawal from certain substances. There is also sibilance consistently used throughout the song itself, with sure, started, bones, grasses, she, fresh, flesh, testing, sure-footed, and so on so forth. This sibilance creates a slurred quality to the lyrics, likely due to being under the influence. Moreover, this hissing sound also mimics the hissing of a needle injecting into skin, showing how consuming this addiction has become on Tyler's life. A binger quite literally means someone that is a drug addict, a junkie, whilst covered in bites could refer to the pinprick of a needle, also exposing how harmful this coping mechanism is given that bites are harmful. Even testing what is real, what is good, could refer to the process of experimenting with substances to see which one works to better quell suicidal thoughts. That reference of calling himself a zombie can also refer to addiction, as he isn't living, just surviving, walking around looking dead due to symptoms of drug addiction and withdrawal. Vignette also lacks a lot of first-person and second-person pronouns. Throughout the entirety of the song, ignoring the bridge, first and second-person pronouns are mentioned just 10 times. This shows that Tyler isn't actually in control of his actions due to the addiction. They are just happening, and he has no autonomy over it given the lack of referral to him actually carrying out these actions. Finally, the quote of "No, not me, it's for a friend" is a statement typically associated with addiction because it's that begging, that reassurance that the substances that they are buying are not for them, but for a friend. Vignette also exposes another unhealthy coping mechanism Tyler utilizes to try and suppress suicidal thoughts, but also to try and gain control over the situation. It is quite literally stated within the lyrics: denial. Firstly, the lyrics of "Piece It Back Together," which also repeats together shortly after as well, implies that Tyler is trying to keep his composure to show that he's fine. The repetition really doubling down on that desperation to seem convincing. Not only that, but this lyric creates connotations of broken porcelain with pieced together, something which can never truly be fixed once broken, showing how his attempts to seem fine and normal are futile. It will never go back to normal and it will never go away like this. To pitch the greener grasses and hope that she would agree directly exposes this. Greener grasses refer to the idiom "the grass is greener on the other side." It typically means that other people seem as though their situations are better. In this instance, Tyler has pitched the greener grasses on his side, as to pitch can mean to construct something. He's trying to construct the image that his situation is better so that people can expend their effort on others who need help rather than him. Meanwhile, to pitch also means to illustrate an idea in an attempt to convince others. He's hoping to convince this she to agree that he is fine. The repetition in the bridge of "No, not me" almost seems as though Tyler is trying to convince other people that he's fine, that the advice he is asking for is actually for a friend. This line doesn't have to strictly be read with the view of addiction. In fact, in tandem with the bridge, the lack of personal pronouns actually ties into this theme of denial, as if Tyler is trying to deny that this issue is one he struggles with, utilizing limited second-person pronouns to make it seem as if it really is a friend suffering, not him, as if he's really talking about this unknown other person lyrically in the song, not him. This bridge hides a lot more. For example, as pointed out by YouTube user Deadass115, the mantra of "No, not me" is repeated 4 times, potentially being a reference to the lyrics, and that's denial number 4 from Ode to Sleep, which just emphasizes Tyler's coping mechanism of denying that anything is wrong and hoping that he can cope. Meanwhile, this verse in itself is repeated thrice, resulting in 3 instances of denial, which can be a reference to Polarize with deny, deny, denial. Polarize in itself is a song about wishing to be better and needing help, but ultimately denying it and hiding those problems under the stairs. Finally, the song ending on denial really affirms the idea that he's still going to deny needing help from others, even if he knows it. Ultimately, Vignette is about trying to cope with suicidal ideation through other unhealthy coping mechanisms, such as addiction or denial, continuing this exploration in Clancy of merely just trying to find ways to cope. The music video adds onto the meaning explored within the lyrics. Particularly, it explores this desperation towards having assistance from a friend in order to cope. It exposes this desperation for support. The general premise of Vignette is Tyler trying to find his way in the dark. this darkness notably framed as the vignette effect in editing, which is a really cool touch. It ends in him leaving this snowy field after following the instructions, creating a path that looks like Josh. The music video palpably displays this desperation to get to Josh, to find him in order to seek help or company or some form of support. Not only is the big Josh-shaped SOS looking sign an obvious indicator of this, but Tyler also wears a hoodie that translates to Josh's best friend, which exposes this reliance he has on Josh. Josh himself seems to sit in a separated area with what looks like a cornfield behind him, bringing to mind ideas of those Halloween mazes and illustrating that Tyler feels lost and that Josh is this destination he is trying to find. Meanwhile, Tyler holds a red letter, potentially a reference to the song Taken by Sleep in No Fun Intended, a song about grief, but notably the chorus asks if the friend has thought about him today. A message that can be relayed to Vignette, with Tyler wondering if this form of company has thought about him. Given that the music video and lyrics do not explicitly mention anything about Dema lore, it is probably difficult to believe that Vignette is lore related. However, when you do look into both the lyrics and the music video, you do start to see a few references and links that seem just a little too intentional. For example, the song itself starts off with this screech of a bird, one that seems reminiscent to the vultures littered throughout the area of Dema and Trench. Meanwhile, the lyrics mention zombies, which can be perceived as a reference to Seizing, and in particular the Paladin Strait music video. It also mentions tunnels caving, which could be considered an allusion to the tunnels that are actively blocked off by the bishops with more escapes. We also have that reference to Heavy Dirty Soul, the start of the story, which I talked about earlier. The song even has a similar layout to Redecorate, with Tyler talking about alternate people and then himself, a song that is heavily associated with Clancy. Finally, the detail of the red letter in the music video could potentially be considered an allusion to the very thing that kicked off this era, the letters sent to members of the clique in a red envelope, the letter being read as a way to convey that link. There is one bit of evidence of there being a link that is more important and prominent than the rest, and this piece of evidence takes the form of a song. One that isn't even on the album. If you cast your mind back to early June, you may remember that the pilots released The Digital Remains, a version of Clancy that could be downloaded to your device that contained never-before-seen images, handwritten versions of the lyrics, and much, much more. Within this file, there were also lyrics to songs not released on Clancy, one of them being titled Drag Path, or alternatively titled Devil's Eyes. Drag Path has always been an odd song to me, largely because it seems to be a demo version of a more lore-centered vignette. After all, the title and the main body of the song talks about Clancy creating a drag path for the Banditos to find him, so that they can save him from his prison, an action mimicked by Tyler in the music video as he drags his feet to create an image of Josh, an SOS symbol to attract his attention so that he can find him. Meanwhile, the alternative title to that song, Devil's Eyes, seems to more directly reference the lyrics of Vignette, with the devil often being associated with darkness and Vignette being the fading or the shading of the background and edges to black. Devil's eyes are potentially a descriptor for red or bloodshot eyes, which can be considered a symptom of drug abuse, and the connection between the devil and drug addiction could potentially allude to devil's breath, a drug that particularly has zombifying effects on takers. Even the theme of the two songs overlap. Vignette is about trying to find ways to cope with depression, whilst Drag Path is about Clancy trying to urge the Banditos to find him, whilst he continues to endure this prison of Dema. With this link in mind, Vignette can translate to Clancy trying to cope with Dema after being recaptured in Levitate and forced to perform in Scaled and Icy. Like in Dragpath, where he is confident that you will find me, Clancy is clinging to the promises made by the Banditos that they will save him and come back to him after more and more escape routes are blocked off. It's him feeling like the vessels which the bishop sees after having unknowingly been seized himself during the Psy livestream, likely suffering the same side effects the possessed vessels do of flaking, peeling skin that he's unsure of when it started. It's him detailing how he never believed he would rebel, always sure of his life in Dema and educated under vilest doctrine, now scared of the city that he lives in because he knows that something is fundamentally wrong with Dema and vilism. It's him detailing the search party that was sent to the Bandito camp to find him, the idea of being hounded by a bunch of dead, not only mimicking the propaganda the bishops use in No Chances of people returning back to Dema dead, but also referring to the fact that the bishops possess dead vessels. The bishops themselves are dead, they are zombies. It's him affirming that his acts of creativity and sigh for the bishops are not for his own survival, not for the people of Dema, but are a message for the Banditos to save him from this prison, probably explaining the existence of No Chances and Redecorate. It's him trying to cope with being back in Dema, waiting for salvation, desperate for those yellow-clad Banditos. Vignette is a documentation of Clancy's feelings between Levitate and that first letter we received in the Psy era during the events of Saturday and the Outside. But, ultimately, these promises made by the Banditos are never actually followed through. As discovered in Navigating, Clancy has been on his own since recapture in Levitate, Josh merely being a mirage projected through the Torchbearer's power of guidance. Clancy is betrayed by the Banditos, left in Dema, stuck in a cycle of trying to cope with his mental state gradually degrading, losing hope of ever escaping again until the events of Saturday. The digital remains actually confirm these feelings of betrayal Clancy finally starts to harbour, likely after the events of Navigating when he realises what has actually been going on. In another demo, this time of Overcompensate, entitled Silver-Weighted Sun, the final verse details that Clancy called allegiances over the grievances of tampered witnesses, likely referring to how he decided to join the Bandito movement after learning of the dark secret of vilism, before breaking alliances over the silences from ignited torches. Clancy felt betrayed by the Banditos after they left him in silence to suffer in Dema, so much so that he wishes to quit their revolution, a suffering that Vignette details in its entirety. After all, having hope that things can get better makes the pain worse when constantly being disappointed by those meant to provide that help. And that's it for my Vignette analysis. Not as long as what I thought it was going to be. I was genuinely expecting it to be half an hour, but I'm glad it's not. Less editing for me. I really enjoyed this one. I hope you all did as well, and I hope the Vignette links made sense. Like TLDR, if you're looking for that, Vignette just details Clancy's feelings of suffering between Levitate and Saturday, essentially. And it details the desperation he had whilst waiting all those years for the Banditos to come and save him. And that is a betrayal. The Banditos promising to save him, to come back for him, but they never do. And Silver-Weighted Sun confirms that Clancy not only views this as a betrayal, but this was indeed a betrayal by the Banditos. In all honesty, it kind of sucks that Dragpath was not added to the album. And in some sense, I kind of wish Overcompensate had this alternative lyric as well. I understand why it didn't, because it doesn't really fit into the theme of Overcompensate. It takes on this more resentful tone when Overcompensate is about overconfidence. But I just think it really, really would have been cool to explore this nuanced side of the existence of the Banditos and Clancy's views towards the revolution. I understand why they didn't implement it, because, as Tyler said, they don't have enough time left on the record to talk about such a development, because honestly, that would need another album. in itself, and they promised they were going to end off with this one, so I get it. I'm going to mourn it though, because it was such a cool concept. And I'm gonna take it as canon because it is in the digital remains, and if it's been put out there, that means it contributes to the story. I don't make the rules. I'm sorry if my throat's sore. It's late. I'm recording this at 10:30, right before I'm about to go on holiday. So, you know, the grind never stops. But either way, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and thank you for watching Top Debate!